Good evening. I call to order the meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission of Davenport, Iowa. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. The initial item is the call to order. Could the staff do the roll call?
Franken?
Here.
Kretz?
Here.
Hostetti?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Miranda?
Here.
Bierman excused? And McGivern?
Here. Thank you. Next item is the Secretary's report. Consideration of the April 9th, 2024 meetings. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
Second, voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes. Next item is communication. Staff, Laura or
Yep.
Matt?
So I've got a few updates for everyone. First is an update on the Heart of Downtown Davenport, Architectural Styles and Stories. So this is a walking tour that's free to the public that's being offered 5 different times over the course of this summer and then into the fall. So in partnering with Special Collections with the library, we've hired a architectural historian, Ellen Shapley, to provide a walking tour. We'll start at the main library and then circle around several blocks of downtown. So it's free to the public, so definitely encourage friends and family to join. And it'd be great too if we can have some commissioner presence too at some of these walking tours as well. Then moving on, so we've confirmed our 2 Party in the Park dates. So these are just fun block party events hosted by the city. So we'll be at the Lindsay Park event on June 27th. I know Commissioner Franken said that she will be there. I'll be at both events. And then we have our Cork Hill Park event August 8th. And I know Chairman Hostetti has agreed to go to that meeting. So all are welcome, just a fun opportunity to get out into the public, maybe answer some questions from historic property owners, and just be more engaged with the community. So feel free to reach out to me if you are able to attend one of these dates. And then finally, I want to update the commission on a certificate of public hazard that was issued to demolish a building. So this is at 1649 West 3rd Street. So this is a national listing. It's the Bramer Grocery Store. So that's the structure at the corner of 3rd Street and Division. But the public hazard was actually issued on the warehouse building, which is highlighted in red, just kind of off that driveway at the south of the property. From what I could find, it was built in 1930. It's just a cinder block structure that's bowing and heaving. So building official and fire marshal thought it would be best that that one comes down. So this is an update to the commission on that. And that is all from staff.
Anything from members of the commission? Seeing none, we move on to old business.
None?
In that case, moving on to new business. First item is case COA 24-06, request to reconstruct front yard retaining wall at 714 West 6th Street. The retaining wall is located within the Hamburg Local Landmark Historic District. Jeremy Genkinger?
We'll take it.
Please correct me.
Kinniger.
Kenninger. Thank you.
You bet.
Jeremy Kenninger. If I could read, it would help, wouldn't it?
You're fine, you're fine.
And Jeremy, if you'd like to step forward to the podium, he is the petitioner.
I could provide an update first if you'd like.
Good.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Jeremy and the subject property, it's known as the Emmanuel Rothschild House. It was built in 1855. Architectural style that's shown is Greek Revival. So it's a simple rectangular home, 2.5 stories. Probably the most significant alteration was the removal of the front porch that was done that you could see in the left photo is the historic photo. The center photo is the current site. This home's located on 6th Street, about half a block from Gaines. So today's application pertains to the retaining wall that's in front of the home. So it's a privately owned wall. It spans about 90 feet, so about the length of that front lot line. It's in a state of deterioration with the walls bowing out onto the sidewalk. It appears to be an old limestone wall. So this project received funding through the DREAM program. And with that, the city of Davenport hired Klinger and Associates to assess the condition of the wall and then to design a new wall for the property owner. So today's request is to remove the wall at the south lot line and then to reconstruct a new wall using Coda block. So in terms of project scope, it would be to demolish the existing wall. So that stone was deemed not salvageable by the engineer. Instead, the wall would be reconstructed using Coda wall systems. So this is a product that was identified by the property owner. And then with that design, they would incorporate the new staircase into the wall and then repave the public sidewalk following reconstruction. So Coda block, it's meant for large-scale retaining walls. It's known for its linear proportion. It has that rough kind of quarried limestone look and texture to it. And it comes in several different sizes and dimensions to give a little bit of character to a wall. So that photo on the right is just an example of a Coda retaining wall. So reconstruction, the existing wall is about 3 feet in height, kind of varies as you span the length of the property. The redesigned wall by the engineer, it's going to be slightly taller than that. It'll probably be closer to 4 to 4.5 of varying stages in height. So that existing wall will be removed. They'll construct the new wall and then backfill and level the yard behind it. So this photo shows the staircase currently. So concrete stairs that are kind of broken apart. So those will be reconstructed, and then new metal hand railings will be placed on top of the wall. So with that, city staff is recommending approval of the application as submitted, and the project meets our standards for historic preservation, and that deteriorated feature should be repaired and replaced with new features that match the design, color, and texture of the existing historic material.
Any questions from the commission?
Drove by it, it needs replaced.
Is this just down from the other one where we?
It's about 2 blocks to the
Two blocks,
west.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that also the Coda stone?
It's a different product. So the one that was approved earlier this year was a Ready Rock product. This is Coda block. Kind of still has that similar kind of rough limestone texture to it.
I had 2 questions, just out of curiosity more than any objection. The existing stone clearly is deteriorated, but does it have any other useful life? Is it to be recycled in some way or simply landfilled?
Basically, the way it's drawn up in the contract is I get that, and then if I refuse it or I don't have any use for it, then the city wants to take possession of it.
And it can be used for other purposes perhaps, not
Including
structural?
Any riprap backfill as well,
Okay.
absolutely.
And-
I've got plans for it though, somewhere else, with less responsibility than what it has now, obviously.
Okay.
Yep.
And one question about the Coda block. We've seen around town where we have replaced, well, for example, in front of the Figge Art Museum, they put in the block permeable pavers, which over time deteriorate actually, in not very long time, they deteriorate. Is the Coda block, does it have a good reputation? Does it stand up for?
Yeah, so it seems like it's a very popular product. I mean, the difference between that, I guess, and the Ready Rock is probably my size of wall is much smaller in height than what Dick Stone is using down the street. We went up to Lake Geneva and saw quite a few properties in their historic neighborhood that have used it, where we saw it first as we were scouting out possibilities. So the rep at King's Material speaks very highly of it, so.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
You bet.
And then just to add, usually salt is the enemy of any kind of masonry or sidewalk or concrete or anything. So that if you salt lightly, that would probably help preserve life too.
Any other questions? Not, we can call the question. Can I have someone put in a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve as provided by staff.
Second. Roll call, please.
McGivern,
Yes.
Franken,
Yes.
Kretz,
Yes.
Pastetti,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Guys.
The second case for this evening is COA 24-07, request for the installation of a new roof and siding at 708 West 6th Street. The Lewis and Mary Railing House is located in the Hamburg Local Landmark Historic District. Matthew Romberg is the petitioner. And staff want to describe this first, and then Matthew can come up.
Guess I'm jumping the gun a little.
No, that's okay. My fault. I set the stage.
All right, so this home is identified as the Lewis and Mary Ryling House. So located just next door to our previous item, so on 6th Street, just adjacent to Gaines. Probably the most unique feature of this house is that it actually wasn't built on this property. It was built at 307 Warren Street, and in 1956, it was picked up and moved to this site. But it is listed as a contributing structure because it does complement the neighborhood that it was placed in. So the project scope is to replace siding with new LP Smart siding and then to install a new asphalt shingle roof. So the siding and trim material, so existing is wood. It's in various states of disrepair on the structure. The replacement product is LP Smart Side. So it's an engineered wood product. It provides that kind of look and warmth of a natural wood, but is durable and low maintenance with modern products. So the applicant's going with a similar color scheme with red siding in a horizontal fashion, and then doing a blue trim. So here you could just see a couple more photos of the home. So the intent's to reproduce the trim and freeze boards on the structure. So it's a pretty simple gable architectural style. So the intent would be to recreate the freeze boards at the roof line and then the trim around the windows. And then the applicant provided a few photos, kind of just showing up close images of the siding and kind of some of the chipping paint or deteriorated wood. And then lastly would be the replacement of the roof. So the existing material, it's a 3-tab asphalt shingle. Replacement with material is architectural asphalt shingle in Owens Corning, and the color choice is terracotta. So staff just viewed this as a replacement in kind of material, so it will maintain the structure in a good state of repair and not alter the appearance much. So with that, staff is recommending approval of their certificate of appropriateness, but are proposing 2 conditions that pertain to the siding. So the first being that the profile of the horizontal LP Smart siding match the profile of the existing wood siding. And second, that the dimension of the freeze board and trim be reproduced with the LP Smart siding material. And then the project was reviewed for conformance with our historic preservation ordinance and meets the below standards, that reasonable efforts should be made to make the minimal number of changes to your building, and that deteriorated features should be replaced with compatible replacement products.
I guess we need a motion, and then we can have discussion. All right?
You could have discussion before a motion.
Okay. Comments or questions from commission members? I guess I just had one question. Does the existing siding come off and then it's replaced with the new siding, or does the new siding go on top of the existing siding?
My understanding is that the existing siding is removed.
Would you mind coming up to the podium so it can get on the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding of it is that the existing siding would be removed and then the smart lab put in its place. As you can see, a lot of the old square nails have worked themselves loose, and in the brief discussions I've had with a couple of local contractors, they said that they would suggest removing the old siding.
Okay.
just as a way to sort of inspect the sheathing and the old wood that's underneath.
Okay. Any other questions? I have a motion.
Earlier, Dan.
Now, that goes one of two ways
You look just like
when I get asked that
I like
question, but yes, he is.
Tell him to give you a hard time.
I will. I'll let him know.
Decorum, people, decorum. Can I have a motion, please, for approval?
I move that, recommend that we approve the certificate of appropriateness in accordance with the stated conditions.
Second. You're good? Roll call, please.
Powers,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Franken,
Yes.
Kretz,
Yes.
Hestetti.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Which then takes us to other business. And the first item on the agenda is the QC passport presentation. Is Judith Lee here?
Thanks, I'll get that loaded out.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks to everyone for allowing me to come. I must start with an apology. I had a dental appointment today that I had no idea would be as bad as it was. So here I am, but took longer than I thought.
Does that look great?
I'll introduce myself. My name is Linda Anderson, and I was not born and raised here, but I've lived in Rock Island now for well over 40 years. When we moved here, the house that we purchased is in a historic district, and so we've been involved with preservation for all of our adult time here. I've been very active in the local preservation society. I serve on the commission in Rock Island, who's about ready to go off at the end of this term. But I'm excited about preservation, and I'm excited about this project that I'm going to tell you a little bit about today. Ask for some guidance from you. So the name of our company is QC Passport, and QC Passport is a fun and interesting project that brings the Quad Cities' rich history to life. It provides a platform that allows organizations to take advantage of a system which creates a coherent set of sites that are linked together and digitally and physically available. The idea came from a sense of frustration that sites can be, despite being well known in the city, they're hard to reach, and we have a hard time intriguing people to actually visit the site. In the spring of 2021, we officially launched our platform with 5 fully produced destinations sponsored through the Channel Cat. Each of these destinations could be accessed through a visit to any of the 4 Channel Cat landings. And Davenport was recognized in this very first outing. The first community partnership was, as I said, with the Channel Cat. It involved the help of 15 local nonprofits, as well as an area geographic, designers, production houses, printers, and a half dozen actors, and a determination by several local leaders to make QC Passport a reality. The Channel Cat partnership was, of course, a catalyst to future partnerships. When we started on the Channel Cat, we put signs up at the approach to the boat, and we tried to pick sites that would cover all areas of the Quad Cities. So, and we tried to match the colors to the wayfinding colors that Visit Quad Cities uses. This particular ones, you can see the one on the left is Bettendorf Wheel Company, and the one on the right is Ben Butterworth Parkway. And then on this side, on this particular space, the one on the left is the Village of East Davenport, and the one on the right is Rock Island Arsenal. And then for Davenport in this first round, we actually did 2. We did the Village of East Davenport, and we also did McClellan Heights. So our first large partnership then, our next partnership was with Visit Quad Cities. And they went ahead and decided to include 10 destinations and communities. And they included East Moline, Rock Island, Arsenal Island, Davenport, Bettendorf, and all of these now are up and are ready to go. So obviously, I'm coming to you to ask for information, for permission to put up the ones that will be going up here in Davenport. As you can see, Annie Whitmeyer's home is one of those. Our third partnership came with the city of Rock Island, and it included 10 destinations within the city. These new destinations included House on the Hill, Royal Neighbors. It was a combination of businesses, homes, and churches. We discovered that churches can be quite competitive when one denomination is getting their church with the sign. Everybody wants to jump on board, so that was kind of an unusual thought for us. And then we also like having partnerships with individual sites, including the Rock Island Library, which supported their own, and then, as I said, churches. St. Mary's Church, Catholic Church in Rock Island celebrated the 175th anniversary, and they wanted a sign as part of their celebration. So when you go up to a sign, you have text to read, but part of the overall program is that the sign will give you a phone number to put into your cell phone, and then you have a 4-digit code. And when you type this code in, that's where you get the bulk of the information about the site. Certainly, whatever we could put on a small sign like this would not be enough to really tell the story of a site or a home or whatever it is we're highlighting. So we're using this process of going out online and with your phone and through the app, and you will be able to read different chapters about the property in place. You kind of see that here. There'll be historic pictures included, and we also have an audio production that is part of the overall program. You can read as much as you want, as little as you want. You can take it with you.
We are so happy to share with you this interview from.
Sorry, I didn't know that was going to
That's
happen.
okay.
We are so happy to share with you this.
And so you can take it home with you at the end if you want to. If you do, well, you can take it home with you. So if you want to read things more away from the site or read it again, you'll have the information with you. You don't lose it when you leave the site. We also are we are called Passport, somewhat for a reason. And our idea is that we will eventually go to the process of having a booklet and like your own little passport. And there will be stamps at each location. And so when you visit the location, you can put your stamp in the booklet. We think this will be more interesting for kids. They'll have something to do and they can take it with them. There is potentially a portion of the plan that eventually will use some sponsors who will provide gifts for the kids based on how many passport stamps they get, things like that, to make it a more interactive and family-friendly program. One of the other things that we try to do with the program is honoring our keepers of the past, which is actually the next one I'm whizzing along here, aren't I? And what we call people who provide information, help us do research, who are knowledgeable of the different subjects, we call them our keepers of the past. Some individuals, a lot of organizations. And so when we put together a program, at the end we do try to acknowledge the keepers of our past. We have a whole section actually on the website that includes keepers of the past. And we encourage people to support the organizations. Most of them, well, other than people, are nonprofits. So we encourage donations to the nonprofit if it's something that you feel is valuable for the community. And we feel that's one way that we can kind of spread the giving back and support the places that do a lot of this research. These are some of our current keepers of the past. So we do have individuals, and then we also have organizations. To try to prove to you that we are Quad City wide, or even more so, we do have the Sawmill Museum on there, which is in Muscatine, but it's a wonderful place.
Sawmill, is that in Clinton?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, it's in Clinton. Yes. This talks a little bit about our promotional ideas. Again, having people cross-promote with our partners, using news releases, digital platforms, including things on our Facebook page. So the idea is to keep an active content with our historic sites, the history of our community. And we'll try to go ahead and promote things that are going on, events. We also try to share information about newer sites that are opening up, or just give information about historic programming, which might not have anything to do with our destinations, but certainly is important to those who are into the history of our community. So this brings me to signs. So when each destination will have a sign. It's two-sided. And it's a wayfinding with the colors that we talked about. And we want the landmark in the picture to look as it did in its heyday. But we also want to provide just a small amount of information to get somebody really interested in the location, and then have them follow the codes and pull up all the rest of the destination, all the rest of the information. So this is what each of the signs will look like. A picture and a small amount of text on one side, and then the destination information on the other. This is what our sign looks like. And I will confess I tried to pick one that's in a pretty place, but this is at the Weyerhaeuser House on the Hill in Rock Island. And so this is how they look when they're installed. We have a sign company here in Davenport that does the installation for us. I will say that we have not had a lot of problems with the signs. We've done a little tweaking about how we put them up, and that's helped. But we really have been pleasantly surprised at how respectful people are of the signage. In the two locations where we will be putting signs here and coming up, if you all agree, at Annie Wittenmeyer, I think we have agreed with some other people in the city that may be putting it on city property down closer to the swimming pool, so it's not on the private property as Annie Wittenmeyer is making its changes. And then at the LeClaire House, we've got a lot of pretty yard space there that would be able to put it. So my mission today was to come to you and get some feedback about what you think about the signage, the prospect of including them here in Davenport moving forward. We have had some discussion with planning and redevelopment about doing a broader number of signs here. This is kind of my first dipping the toe in the water to see what you think about it. But I certainly want to recognize the historic content of the places where we're putting the signs, and would appreciate your input if you have any.
Thank you, Linda. Questions from commissioners or responses? Bob?
I guess this is a significant undertaking and a lot of time and skill. So I guess what I missed is what's your funding basis is this all volunteer, or what are you doing to pay people to do all of this stuff?
I do the fun
Linda, could you stand here at the podium? Thank you.
I do the fun stuff. The president of the company does the hard stuff of getting the money together. So if you don't mind, I'll let her answer that question. This is the president of our company.
Hi, I'm Natalie Linville Mass. And no, our funding, originally, to be able to put the signs up, the city of Rock Island created a contract with us to put these 10 signs together. And that funded Linda's research, Josh's research, our writing, our copywriting. It funded the audio production, which is fully produced. It also funded being able to hire local actors who have, Swedish accents, German accents, whatever is needed for the different immigrant populations that we've had in this area, as well as the signage companies. And yes, so the city of Davenport invested in 10 of these destinations, have purchased them, those are completed. And Visit Quad Cities purchased another 10 of those. And then Metrolink purchased 6. And then, like we said, we have 2 individual ones, and then we're putting one up at our office. Our office was actually built in 1874. And so it also has its own long history. And so we wanted to make sure that that was a piece of it too. But once you put the destinations up, that's really the first part of it, right? I mean, we need to have somebody continue to keep those signs viable. You know, signage only lasts so long. I know you guys have seen along the Mississippi, there's some that could really use some repair. There needs to be maintenance. And so that's where gamifying this and kind of like, you know, history, you know, Pokemon history for Go. You know, I mean, it's kind of like you can go to all of these sites. The more sites you go, the more points you get, the more badges you get, the more prizes you get. Well, those prizes are going to be from local commercial, you know, businesses in our area who want to support this project and also would like to see more visitors at their places. And there'll be banner ads that they can also invest in. We don't need a lot of advertisers. We're only talking about a few, but enough to be able to help pay for the maintenance as we continue with the signage. Also, we are, the booklets will be for sale, and it'll be at an affordable price for people to be able to pick up and take on the tour as well. So there are funding streams in place, Robert, to answer your question so that this is viable for the long haul. And like Linda said, I mean, the 2 signs that we're talking about today for Visit Quad Cities, the LeClaire House and Annie Wittenmeyer, they're complete and they've been purchased. So this is of no cost to the city of Davenport. We are looking for your permission to be able to put these signs up. And with the current way that we have the signage up, and I don't know if you can go back a few slides just so that they can see it. It's currently, our current signs are made with a PVC exterior. And we have if you can go back one more to show that actual photo. Where is it? Up the other way, I guess, forward. Yeah.
That one?
Yep, thank you. So they not only, they're put in with a wooden post underneath so that they don't move so much in the wind. We also like the PVC post because, don't tell anybody, but we've got an air tag in them. We did have one sign that walked up and went away, and so we want to see where it goes. And so that's one way for us to be able to track it and be able to see what's happening. And like I said, as far as maintenance goes, we have been really fortunate. We've only had one person who decided to put their own artistic piece onto one of our signs. But that's going to happen, and you know that's going to happen with any kind of signage. So that's where the maintenance comes in. We have it with this kind of a structure versus a monument structure because this is only a couple $100s to reproduce. If we go with a larger structure, like some of the monument signs that you see along the Mississippi, you're talking about thousands of dollars for anything that happens to those signs. So this was well thought out as something that we could have around the area to be able to really get people to be in the place where it happened. There's some gravity to that. It's not just, you know, you read about it in a museum and that's one thing and it's wonderful that those are there. But to be actually where it happened, to be in the footsteps of some of these characters that we have in that audio production, you know, if those are fully produced productions, that's why we had one in there, that really goes into a lot of detail and really puts you back in that place and time that was a focus for that particular piece. So like for the lumber barons, which I believe is the one that we had there for the city of Davenport, that took us back to the LeClaire lumber house and or lumber mill. And that lumber mill was with a manager from that place and what it would have been like to work for the lumber mills in the 1870s. And you're standing in the same location where those lumber mills were. So, I mean, that's what the purpose of this is. We want to get people excited about the past and help them imagine what can happen here in the future.
You mentioned the booklets will be for sale. Is that the same as the passport? Or is that?
That's the
sep-
passport.
That is the passport.
So we're gonna make passport size, I'm changing, it's passport. So they're gonna be the size of a passport.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like a passport, you'll have a page that talks a little bit about it, and then there'll be an empty page where you can stamp. And we have an illustrator on staff, and she's creating individual stamps for each one of the locations. So they'll all be unique. And we didn't talk about the colors. So 15 years ago, Bill Geist came through here, and he did an evaluation of our area to see what attracts visitors to this region, and what helps us and what hinders people when they come here. And the biggest hindrance and the biggest help is the Mississippi. The Mississippi is fantastic. It's a big draw here. The history of this area is a draw here. But when people come here, this is the only place in the country where the river flows from east to west. And it messes with all of us. And so they're like, there has to be some way to be able to show people what area that they're in and to help them acclimate to this area. And so the compass with the 4 colors does that. And it divides each of the areas into a quadrant. So it's not just Bettendorf, but Bettendorf, LeClaire, that area, that would be gold or yellow. And then our area in Davenport, which would also be Buffalo, thank you, that, you know, that would be the same green. And then the red for Rock Island, but like Milan in that area, Andalusia, the blue would be for Moline, Hampton, Port Byron, that area. So it covers the entire Quad Cities. And again, the other piece of this too was we want to make sure that we elevate the history in our area. So the partners that we have come on board and help us with these pieces, these different nonprofits, we do, like Linda said, we cross-promote them. In other words, we do a lot of posting about their events, about different things that they have going on each individual each individual destination, On the first page, there is, please, visit this place. Please make sure you donate, because without these folks, none of this would be here. And it's all in collaboration with them.
Could you explain the code again?
So everybody has an app on their phone, right? But it takes up memory. And pretty soon we start deleting those apps. And honestly, I felt like it was more of a nuisance than a help. So what we did instead is we went with a text system. So you put in this text code and it brings up that specific destination. And all you have to do is put in, so you text like 4 numbers on each sign, and that'll bring up the entire history. But this text also records what phone number is texting onto that line, which automatically helps record the locations that you've been to. So you can access those locations again. Some of these are like 30 pages long. But they're easy to read because they're divided into subtexts that you can go into and find out all of these cool little things about our area.
And then it's accompanied by a website too,
Yeah.
that you can get directly to that spot. That's basically what it is.
The way that we've set it up, qcpassport.com is our website, and that shows you how it works, and it will have a map where all of the locations are. We are hoping that that'll be up in the next 2 weeks. Keep our fingers crossed. But the whole point is that we want people to get out and experience this. So we don't want people to know the text code until they get to the location. And then once they've got it in their phone, and they can read through the rest of it later. But again, I don't want people just looking this up on a phone, at their house and saying, oh, isn't this cool? I want them to go there and feel it and experience it and see what that location is like. We've got a really cool community, and this is one way to make sure that people can really take it in.
Other questions?
I guess I have one more. So what's the procedure when you put one of these signs out in the city of Davenport? Obviously, you contact the property owner, but what about the neighbors? I mean, people are funny in neighborhoods when something new comes into their neighborhood, especially established neighborhoods. So what's your protocol to make sure everyone is on the same page that this thing is going to enter their neighborhood?
We work with the city,
Yep.
and the city has different codes.
So I can have a high-level answer to that question.
Thank you.
A lot of the ones that they're looking at are local landmarks, so they will come before you formally for approval. And so far, the ones discussed are city property, and there are a few in there that are private property that they would need to work through. In the zoning code by right, property owner is allowed to do a historic marker on property. Now, I've never had that question posed specifically related to driving people to what neighbors might feel about it. That hasn't really been posed, but it's a good question.
I think this is something that the city is going to have to I think this is something the city is going to have to figure out, because we've had historical issues in the past where it's been a surprise, and then what was positive turned into something not positive.
No, thank you, Robert. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, the two that we've got proposed, right, well, not proposed, they're done. We're really hoping that you guys will let us put the signs up. One is Annie Whitmire. And again, what we were thinking was putting it by the public pool, because there's a public parking lot right there. And because of the changes happening with Annie Whitmire and the sensitivity of the people who are there, we want to make sure that we can take them to a place where they can still see everything about Annie Whitmire without having to go up onto the complex. As far as the LeClaire House goes, there is a parking lot up there where it would make sense to go ahead and put our signage up there. And it would complement what's up there right now. So that's kind of where we were thinking, but we're open to discussion. I mean, those are our recommendations, but the city may have different recommendations. You may have different recommendations on what you'd like. And then, yes, Laura knows we've also been proposing other sites within the city of Davenport, another 10, to see if, because we want this to be on both sides of the river, not just on one primarily. And so we have picked out different destinations that are talking points, but also, like I told Laura, these are open to other destinations that maybe you guys might think are more important, or other ones that we really need to focus on. So, yeah, it's First National Bank, First National Bank on Second Avenue, that's one of them. The Davenport Library is actually wanting to do their own sign in the downtown area. And then we also talked about Schutzen Park. We've talked about, a number of locations, but you're right, they're really more public or already historic landmarks that are already deemed to be that, so.
I just think it would behold the city to, in mixed-use locations, to
Yep.
have a policy that's somewhere to zoning or some other change, or at least there's a notification.
Yeah, I'll bring it up and see if I mean, we could probably prioritize parks and public locations for the time being, and then circle back on some of the ones that might be like the Beiderbecke House or things like that are more in a neighborhood. We'll have to revisit on how we want to handle those.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. Thank you.
Other
Thank you very much.
questions? So, Matt, do we need to take formal action on this then this evening?
So tonight's informational only.
Okay.
So QC Passport will have to come back with each location and identify the type of sign that they're going to put out, whether it's a freestanding sign or affixed to a building or a structure, and then provide the dimension like you would with any other sign. So tonight you could provide some feedback and comments, and then they could submit an application with a little bit more detailed information as to the whereabouts of each location.
I think
and the content.
a large part of the feedback I think they need is their standard sign, as Linda mentioned, is a PVC sign. And so in particular, I wanted to talk through that with you as a commission, because I know typically we're not generally in favor of PVC as a material in historic neighborhoods. So I think that's one direction they're looking for, because it is a higher expense and that would impact how they finance things.
So let me address that piece of it too. So the PVC has a couple, like I said, has some real pluses to it. One, it is a little bit less expensive so that if it is damaged, we can replace it. We can put an air tag in it, so if it leaves us, we can go find it. And for the stamper, it's easy for us to adhere the stamper to it too. For the wooden sign, this would be locally constructed. It is gonna be more expensive. We have priced that out. It's a couple $100 more per sign. It isn't as much as we had expected, but that would be an alternative. And it would be very much like the structure that was there, although it wouldn't have the decorative end caps like this has. It would be pretty much a flat wooden sign. It's not gonna be able to have an air tag adhered to it because there's no way to hide it in there. It would be just as easy to be able to put the stamper on it. I mean, we can connect that and adhere it to it. But quite frankly, the other part of it is too, I mean, it is a wooden sign, which is more open to deterioration from weather and from the elements. The PVC is not as, doesn't have that same issue. So those are my concerns with it. As far as the other option that I was told was metal, and we looked at some metal signs, and you're looking at $2,000 more than a couple $100 what we're looking at for this. So.
So feel free to give Natalie and Linda feedback on that specifically, so that they know what to plan for in the future. I mean, obviously, it's just feedback at this point. It's each individual one to be voted on. There might be contextually, it might not make sense. In some places, it might make sense in others, but.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, the two signs that are completed and ready to go up, like I said, are Annie Whitmire and the LeClaire House, and both of those are freestanding.
Similar to this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we almost need a road trip to, actually, I'd like to see this in real life to
Yeah.
get a sense of it.
Yes.
Because I agree with you that the absolutely beautiful signs that River Action put up along the river.
Yeah, they are.
Some of them still are in great shape, but some of them have seriously deteriorated. And I'm assuming once you built one of these, created one of these, if it does start to fade or crack or whatever, they're relatively easy to replace?
Yeah, they are.
So this is, okay.
Is there a coating on the sign to help prevent vandalism? Or have you had a problem?
So with the two people that, with the one person, or I think there's more than one, but anyway, that put their mark on, they put it on the post itself. So we were told we could use some vinegar and water to try to get it off. We're gonna try that approach. We'll see what happens. Otherwise we can paint over it. But yeah.
I think she's
you know.
more specifically asking about for fading, like the UV protection on the sign itself.
Oh, yeah, no, that'll be fine. Just people's artwork is something else.
And then if you're not prepared today to provide feedback, you can give it to Matt and she can pass it along too.
The only feedback I'd have for you is I think the PVC sign is gonna cause you some problems in some locations.
Okay.
So I think if you're looking for a rubber stamp, across the board, you might have a problem, at least from my perspective. But I can see like in some mixed residential settings where the PVC would not be appropriate. I mean, we're just now getting applicants where they're putting wood siding on instead of vinyl. It's been a long stretch on this PVC over here. And I don't know if that sign would be appropriate in some of the more residential neighborhoods.
Would the
PVC.
wood be viable?
With the PVC.
Okay, but would
Just
the
my
wood?
feedback, yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine, Robert. Would the wood be viable? Okay.
I would think so. But again, I think that's where the neighborhood kind of clarity and translucency of what's gonna happen will help.
And that is why I wanted to come. And that is why I wanted to come initially, to bring this up, because I didn't really want to come with a proposal that you deny. I think we would like to talk about it first and see where we're going to go. I think one of the quickest ways to see one, I was going to say Bettendorf, but does anybody know where the park is? Bettendorf, that is along the bike path. There's a small park called Bush Park.
Well, where was, it's Bush Park.
Bush Park. So there's one there. And then if you want to venture across the bridge, which nobody does these days too much because there's construction on both sides, there's one at the county office building that's for Modern Woodmen of America. That was their original building. And then Royal Neighbors, it's across. So those are two places to see them, on site.
This one is at Augustana College, that house on the hill. So I can show you where that one is. I lived right by it, so I can
yeah.
point to that one if you want to see that one specifically.
And then right down the road from that is also Halberg Center, and Halberg has one as well.
The Halberg
Yeah.
site does have one?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Something for us to consider. Okay. Should we move along then?
Sure.
Yeah, by the way, I think it's a terrific idea. I really think it's great. In fact, it may come back a little later. We're going to be talking about something from a conference that we had this past weekend. And they're doing the same thing, but around the state. So this is great. Yeah, appreciate your time. Second item on the other business is the Congressional Historic Preservation Caucus. This came out of the latest Preservation magazine. There was an article in which within Congress, there are innumerable caucuses, and our representatives belong oftentimes to dozens of them. And they're talking places for our legislators to get together and discuss the issues that the caucus focuses upon. In the article in Preservation, it mentioned that some 30-plus states are represented. Iowa is not. Think of that. So I asked Matt if it would be appropriate for this commission to approach our representative, in this case Representative Miller Meeks, with a request that she add the caucus to her list of caucuses. I believe she's on about 16 right now. But the idea is to get an Iowan into that group discussing preservation issues, or at least in the group listening to others talking about preservation issues. And so Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about this or if I should just keep babbling.
I think you're doing a great job.
All right.
I guess so the matter at hand for this evening is, one, would the commission like to reach out to Representative Miller Meeks to encourage her to join this caucus? And then two, we've drafted two different letters. We could either have a letter solely from the chair or have a letter signed by each member of the commission. So those are the 2 points that staff would like to have addressed tonight.
So discussion about the idea of approaching Miller Meeks, I guess is the first thing. Is this something that the commission is okay with?
I like it.
I wouldn't support it.
Yeah.
I think we all sign it.
Yeah, and I say we all sign it also, as one. No offense to you, but.
No, in fact, I like the idea of this all. The only question was, because Eric isn't here this evening, is there a way we could contact Eric and have him sign it after the fact?
Yep, I could reach out to Eric.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Try to get a hold of him.
I think that's great too. I'd like her to see the entire commission say, yes, we think this is a great idea. Okay. Well, that handles both those issues then.
Yep.
What about isn't she up for reelection?
She is.
She
So-
is, she passed her primary, we waited till after the primary.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
assuming she doesn't win, we can approach whoever replaces her too. We might come back to you with a letter
Okay,
for that one too.
perfect.
I'm sure Christine Bohannon would be more than happy to join the caucus if we asked her to. And I actually believe Miller Meeks probably will as well. This is not an added burden to her staff, although it does add one additional potential meeting she'll have to go to. But, all right. So if that's the case, do we need a motion on this?
Let's
Matt?
make a motion, and then assuming it's approved, I'll
Yeah.
pass the letter
Okay.
for signatures.
Do you want to do
So-
roll call?
If we can maybe get a motion in a second, then I'll do roll call.
So I move that the commission compose a letter signed by all members of the commission encouraging our representative, Marionette Miller Meeks, to consider adding the Preservation Caucus to her list of caucuses.
Okay,
Roll call or just voice vote?
I'll do roll call.
Okay.
Miranda,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Franken,
Yes.
Kretz,
Yes.
Estetti,
Yes.
and Powers.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you could all please just stick around after the meeting, we have it here so we can get your signatures tonight.
Super. I like how on the ball you are. Thank you, Matt, or, yeah, both of you. It's terrific. Okay. Moving then to the third point, Preserve Iowa Summit. That was this past weekend down in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. A couple of us were able to spend some time down there. I don't know, Chris, if you want to give us a little.
I unfortunately could not make it.
Oh, no.
I had two issues. AC went out and some other things were going on at our new place and had to cancel. And unfortunately, the person who was going with me is my contractor. So he also had to cancel.
He was working on your AC.
Yeah, I was gonna go to one seminar, he was gonna go to the other, we were gonna share notes, and we both had to back out. That was obviously after I chatted with you, so it, but I am still, I reached out and I'm trying to get as much information on tax credits and grant writing. Those are the two things I was
Very
looking
good.
forward.
Okay.
So what did you learn?
Well, I want to thank the city, by the way, for buying my ticket for that day. The drive down was delightful, except for the road that was closed west of Columbus Junction. I went down on Saturday for the roundtable that had to do with governmental groups, governmental agencies in relation to historic preservation. And I started this over here, I'm going to pass this down. This is the program for the entire conference. I would say that Mount Pleasant does know how to put on a conference. They had a lot of people supporting it, but the materials they put together and the people they had speaking, I kind of snuck into a couple other events and just listened briefly. Were really, really first class. I really enjoyed it. Also, it was nice to meet other people of like mind, people who care about the built environment and want to see it maintained. I went to what's called the CLG Roundtable. This is dealing with governmental agencies and how they deal with issues. The first part of mine was rural historic preservation, successes in small town Iowa. Now, Davenport is definitely not a small town for Iowa. But if you're familiar at all with Nichols in northwest Muscatine County, kind of a nice town. Hetty and I have been through there before. They've done some extensive work through Lynn Pruitt. He's on their Historic Preservation Commission for the county. And a woman named Jennifer Price who comes in from Cedar Rapids. She's a historian and also one who does research on historic preservation. And they put together some grant funding and they did the canvassing. From the way they described it, it sounded very similar to what we did here in Davenport in the 1970s, when we did an inventory of significant structures. All right. So, I mean, Davenport's ahead of them in that way, but by doing that, they were able to acquire quite a bit of money through grants to maintain structures and help owners of structures to keep their buildings looking good. There was another session on who built that, the inside story of intensive downtown historical architecture. 4 members of the Mount Pleasant Historical Preservation Commission gave tours of their downtown. Have any of you been to Mount Pleasant? Yeah, okay. It's a nice town. It is not Disneyland. Let me tell you, it's not been prettified. There are some structures that are matchless, they're really, really terrific, and others that frankly show what happens when we want to modernize things in the 1930s, and so there's simple brick walls and one thing and another. But that's part of life as well, how things evolve. They also had a walking tour downtown, which was quite interesting, and talking about the various structures. A fellow by the name of Leo Landis, some of you might know him, he's from Des Moines. He's at the State Historical Museum of Iowa. Mentioned that we're having the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the founding of the nation, coming up in 2 years. And so there's a statewide action to get things rolling. I'm sure Davenport must be planning something. Maybe. What they are doing at the State Historical Society is celebrating this before the 4th of July, so that local communities can have it on the 4th of July, which will be on a Saturday, by the way. So it's a perfect opportunity for local communities to do, Declaration of Independence celebrations, 250th, that sort of thing. But the state is doing a really big deal the week before, so we can move in with those. And the last item I'm going to mention is something called Iowa's Historic Sites. Iowa Historic Sites. Michael Plummer, who's also from he's the historic site manager for the state, talked about a number of different places across the state of Iowa which are significant, from Montauk, Governor Larrabee's mansion up here in northeastern Iowa, to the Toolsboro Mounds down near Wapello, right? Going all the way across the state up to the northwest where I think it's the Oneota Indian, it wasn't a tribe, but it was a culture. The Oneota was the largest Oneota cultural area, and it's up in northwest Iowa. That's part of these historic sites. Anyway, the things the states are doing to maintain these structures or sites and encourage learning the history of these, and for Iowans to be proud of being Iowans. Look at this cool stuff we have, and we should really celebrate it. So those things are happening. And they mentioned that they're also looking for signage to be put up across the state. And apparently, Davenport, Iowa had the first 2 signs that were created by the Iowa State Historical Society. They're now across the state in many areas, not replicating exactly what Passport is doing, but the idea is there, right? So I had a morning and afternoon full of listening to people talking about all these exciting initiatives, and they talked about grant opportunities, how one gets into those. And next year, the first weekend of June, it will be held in Muscatine. So hopefully, maybe some of us will want to go down and check it out. And I would encourage us. I think it's really terrific. I guess enough said on that. Any questions, comments? Sorry you didn't make it. Really was fun.
I'm glad you're AC.
Really, no. I guess next open forum for comment. Is there anyone? Yes. Please come forward to the podium and give us your name and gifts.
I have things to talk about. My name is Judith Lee, Second Ward.
Oh,
And this is the second time I've heard the Passport talk, and it's just as exciting the second time as the first time I heard it. I grew up in Massachusetts in a house that was built in 1799, had the bubbled windows and wide floors and closet, 3 pieces of wood for an entire closet door. So the history here to me is fascinating here in Davenport. And the city has been doing some excavating up by Heritage Memorial Park, River Heritage Park. And as we all know, anything that's on the river side of the tracks is all fill. And so along here, this is an 1883 map, I think. And we were walking through there to get to the other side, and we found some really interesting things. And then we kept looking, and what we found was a window into the life of Davenport in middle and upper class between 1890 and 1920. Everything we found as we checked it out were from those times. And what first got my attention was this pottery with this absolutely beautiful pattern. And on the back, it says OP Company, Syracuse. And so I looked it up, and there's a company out of New York State, called the Onondaga Pottery Company. And I contacted them because they have a museum as well as a history area to find out a little bit about this. This was a patented pattern in 1905. And they were thrilled to find out that their pottery was over here on the west side of the Mississippi River. And another interesting thing about it, we found quite a few pieces, but one of them has kind of a logo. It's a series of, a set of initials in a garland with a ribbon, which nobody can seem to identify. So this is kind of a mystery of what it is, but it was here in Davenport. So I've got an entire set of this, along with the history of this pottery and this, we know the name of the man who designed it, when they patented it, where it came from. So part of that window includes, we found this, Black Hawk Hotel. It's got the picture of Black Hawk. So doing some homework, we went into, it's called Restaurant Ware Collectors. This is 1915. And it's the same company as this. They love to do logos and for special places. So this is the 1915 one for the Black Hawk Hotel. Another one, and this one is fascinating. We could not figure out what this was, but we found a lot of it. And it's glass with edges. The backside has angled grooves, yeah. And the other side, on many of the pieces, have a beautiful design. And what is this? I thought maybe it started out being a light, cover for a light or whatever. But what we found out, there's a torch on it. In 1897, there was a company in Chicago that made these as pieces of glass to put in transoms in stores to bring in more light by angling the light down. And they hired a young man named Frank Lloyd Wright in 1897 to make some designs. Now, this is not one of them, but what we did find out is the Gordon Van Tyne building and company, they were a huge company here in Davenport. It's called Jupiter Prism Glass with a torch design. And nobody seems to know much about it, but they're tying it back, because the library's been involved, this is what I found out on the internet, but they're tying it back to the Gordon Van Tyne company. And they're quite rare, and I have many pieces, including most of them with the decorative. So, found a lot of bottles. Some of them in quite good shape. Wine bottle with the, whatever you call it underneath. I don't drink, I forget what it's called. But we found quite a bit of that. We found, there is, you probably know, there was a soda company here in Davenport called the WITT, W-I-T-T. So they made soda. So I found a bottle that had the J-H-W, and then I found another bottle that had the WITT on it.
That's next door to Matt.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay, they made soda here and mineral water, and they bottled beer and other things. So this, and I just brought a few things. I mean, I have a lot more. Here's, how would you like to wear a lady's shoe that's that narrow and that pointed? But that was down there, and this man had a problem with his shoe. So there's this history down there. Oh, one more. This is really important. I'm sorry. This is pottery from England. And I had found a piece, this piece, that had a little tiny, it had like O-N-E and C-H. And I looked it up and I tied it back to a place in England. And then we found this, which is the full mark on the bottom of the plate. And I was right. It's the Royal Ironstone China, Alfred Meekin, England. So we found this beautiful set. That's all of this, interestingly enough, every time we looked into it, it all came back from about 1890 to 1920. So what we have, at least in that part of the riverfront, east of the railroad, between the river, not east, I'm sorry, I'm as confused, okay? Between the railroad tracks and the river is this mirror into 1890 to 1920. And we just saw about 5% of the site, because the rest of the site had already been excavated and worked on and then covered over. If you walk down the bike path there by the parking lot for the park, there, you'll see pottery shards on top of the surface down there. And of course, I never noticed them before because I wasn't looking until we found this. And I guess my interest here is one, this to me is very exciting, to have this kind of, like I said, window into what's going on in Davenport. But two, I believe, and I'd like to encourage you folks to, there'll be more work between the tracks and the river, more excavation work. And I suspect, I don't know, but we do know that all of that area was filled because that's how they made the land. They said, come on down and dump your stuff. I mean, this one even, here's a chunk of coal that was out in there. And I also found, it was a Purington paver, which we're all familiar with, but I'm familiar with the ones that say paver. This one says Purington Galesburg, which is where the company was. And I think this is pretty rare, because I can't find any reference to Purington Galesburg. Everything is Purington paver.
Stamping's even different.
And the stamp is different, and it's inside. It's not embossed standing up, which is what the other ones are.
A lot of those down there too, the other paver ones are down there too.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of really cool stuff down there on the riverfront. And I'm sorry?
Where did you say this all was?
Do you know where River Heritage Park is, where they're doing the excavation to put in the flood mitigation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Talking about the Kiwanis shelter in that area.
yeah, it's about covered up now. There's very little exposed anymore. But anything that's, I would encourage you folks that anything that's being excavated down along the riverfront, between the railroad and the river, we really need to have a look at. I mean, this is probably 45 minutes or an hour total over several trips to pick up, and I have lots more at home. I suspect that there's probably a lot of historic Davenport in that fill. And if we could get some kind of work done down there before the excavation and, or during the excavation, or at least borings, to see what we've got, I think that would be fascinating.
Basically make sure we don't lose any more history down there. Amazingly enough, a lot of this pottery was on the surface, and you can see where the tracks have gone over it and the heavy equipment, and we still found fairly intact pieces with labels on them, internet
Well,
searches.
embossed, yeah.
Embossed, yeah.
Yeah, because back then they weren't putting too many labels. I found an ink pot from St. Louis. A company from St. Louis down there, the top of it. Milk bottle. I've got an insulator that's quite rare. As I was going through looking at historic insulator, you know, the insulators for electric poles.
Power lines.
Telegraph poles.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, have you approached the Putnam Museum
You
with
know, I
this?
called them today, and interestingly enough, everybody that has to do with archiving is out of town until the 10th.
Must be a
Everybody,
conference.
the entire office. But I have left a message and I will contact them again.
Because they are sort of our local repository of history, and for a long time, they had the River Prairie and People exhibit, which has now been revised, updated. But these things that you are sharing with us, I have seen similar things in their archive collection. And I am assuming Christine and others would love to hear the story, but also encourage their own interns perhaps to be
Yeah.
down there going through the sands.
I mean, you can almost see it with a window, you know, into that
Yeah,
period
absolutely.
turn of the century Davenport. And I just suspect all the way along the riverfront, anything on the other side of the tracks is gonna have similar stuff. And this was everywhere in this area. I mean, there's a lot of it. And we, again, we were only looking at about 5% because everything else had already been disturbed and covered over. So I can't imagine what we lost by not studying it. And I hope we don't do it again.
Indeed.
So, and I think the only thing that's coming up directly is probably the park that they're gonna put down there. So I don't know when they're planning on starting that, but it may be something to consider. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Judith. I admire your enthusiasm. I really do.
I
No,
love
this is great.
history.
This is great.
When I found out what they were doing, I was like, there's so much going on here that we don't know about and have gone on, so I'm very excited.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the commission? Anything else from commission or the city?
I think before we adjourn, I'd like to say thank you to Commissioner Miranda for serving on our board. This is her last meeting, and we've enjoyed your time, and hope you got a lot out of it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Hearing nothing else, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? By voice, all in favor, say aye. 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 We are adjourned.